Hello, good evening, and welcome to Sheffield Live. You are watching African Voices with me, Bailo Jallo. And on today's show, we'll be talking about Guinea-Conakry, a country in West Africa. A country, for the past couple of months, there has been protests going on in the capital and other parts of the country. The reason being, the protest, the country's president, President Alpha Condé, is wanting to stand for a third term, which many people are saying it's not going to happen because it's against the Constitution. However, before we kick off, it's a pleasure for me to introduce our guest tonight, who is nobody but Mr. Dian Bah, who is the leader of FNDC in the United Kingdom, which means, or which stands for Front National pour la Défense de la Constitution. In English, it means a national front to defend the country's constitution. So, Dian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mr. Bailo.
Right. As I mentioned, you are the leader of the FNDC in the United Kingdom. So before we go on what's happening currently in the country Guinea, give us an idea of what's FNDC all about.
Mr. Jallo, it's my pleasure to be here today. But first of all, before I go any further, I would like you to allow me to address my condolences to the victims' family.
Yeah.
There have been more than 130 victims. I address my deepest and sincere condolences to the victims' families and friends, to the FNDC, and to the Guinean people as well. To the Guinean people, because one thing remains clear to me, is that the only people that benefit from these killings are those who open fire and the one who instructed them to do so. So, once again, I address my condolences to all the victims' families and friends. We say in French, je présente toutes mes condoléances aux familles éplorées, and to the language of the 99.9% of the victims. Ontora mayarlagol. Allah hilno be yafo ensi time. Thank you.
If I can just translate what you've just said in another language there, which I believe it's the Fulani language, meaning you are trying to like sympathize with them, telling them, giving them your deepest condolences in regarding to the victims. Exactly. So as I mentioned at the beginning, let's talk about the FNDC to start with. So what's the FNDC all about, and where did the idea come from?
Actually, the FNDC was created in April 2019, just a couple of months ago, when we realized that history is chasing us. Because I want to emphasize that the former president, General Lansana Conté, did the same referendum to remain in power till he died. And the previous one before him, Sékou Touré, was in power as well till he died. And this one was according to national and international institutions, was democratically elected. So we do not want to stand there and he's going to modify the constitution and stay in power until he dies as well. Mm-hmm. That's where the idea of creating a movement called FNDC in order to stop him from moving forward in changing the constitution.
So who is involved in this FNDC? Is it like the opposition, or who are the people? Who are the backbones of this FNDC?
The FNDC is composed by some political parties, the majority of political parties, and the civil societies. Mm-hmm. Is the biggest movement ever known in Guinea, okay. The FNDC. It's not a political movement, but the fact that we have political leaders among us who are, first of all, Guineans, so it turned up to have some political means, but it is not a political movement at all. That's why I represent the FNDC in the UK, and I am not affiliated in any political party whatsoever.
Okay, talking of that though, not being affiliated to any political party, from my understanding, a couple of weeks ago, there was a protest here in the United Kingdom as well, likewise in other parts of Europe and in America. So talk me through, how did the protest go, and who were the people involved?
The Guinean people, because the actor in this organization, in this protest, in this movement, are Guineans. So Guineans from all over the world stood up together, to say no to the modification of the Constitution. It doesn't matter whether they are in Guinea, in the United States, in Europe, wherever they are. We know that we are the majority, and we lived the history, and we know what happened before. We don't want that to happen anymore. That's why we come together, hand to hand. We work around the clock in order to get this constitution not to be changed for personal reasons. Okay,
that's well understood. But has the president made this clear to the Guineans that he intends to stand? Because at first there were rumors, even some ministers talking about it. But has the president come out clearly saying he wants a third term?
I can say yes, he said it. Yes, he said it. He said it. He had an interview recently in the United States. I think it was, I forgot, I don't want to say it's Voice of America or something like that. He said it. He said he doesn't know when he's going to leave, while the Constitution clearly told him where to leave. Okay. And he said it in an interview with TV5, the French channel.
TV5.
TV5. He said, if he changed the Constitution, it's not going to be a new mandate. It's going to be a new republic. So he's going to stand for a new first term, which will take him maybe for another second or third term. So he's already said it clearly. That's why we too, we are saying it clearly that it's not going to happen, because the country belongs to all of us.
Right. With all this happening, I think it is happening at a cost. Because as you mentioned at the beginning, you're kind of sharing your condolences to the victim. Since Mr. Condé took power, there has been protests over and over. But likewise, as the protests are happening, unfortunately, there has been casualties. So in terms of these casualties, or those who have died, who are doing the killing? Because looking at it, the opposition is claiming it's the government. And likewise, the government is claiming, look, it is the opposition, it's thugs and that kind of thing. Can you just shed the light on this?
Mr. Jallo, I think it's just a propaganda. These young boys and girls, first of all, they're not protesting only against the government. They're protesting for a change of system. The system that has always denied them good education, health, and a lot of other things. So how come they're going to protest with the opposition against the government, and the opposition shoot them? It's a propaganda. Those who have been killed were killed by the military. Some soldiers have been identified clearly. Their photos are on the social network. Recently, I don't know if you heard about it, it was covered by Al Jazeera, where the soldiers opened fire on the funeral procession.
Live ammunition.
Yes. Killing 2 mourners. The opposition cannot do that. And Al Jazeera showed it, not France 24, TV5 as well. And that was kind of live. You could see it happening. You could see the soldiers opening fire, And the bullets are not like civil guns. They are fired by military guns. And those guns, we know who they are. We know where they come from.
Okay.
You know, so saying that the opposition can organize a protest and kill its own members is just, you know, to try and cover the face. But it didn't work, it's not going to work, and it will never work, because at the end of the day, at the end of the day, the people that are behind this killing will be prosecuted.
Talking of prosecution here, though, has there been any investigation into this, some of these allegations that you are alleging now, the killings being from the military or from the government? Has there been any investigation?
That's even one of the reasons that you can clearly identify that the government is behind it, because there hasn't been any investigation. And the opposition is powerless. You know, they cannot start investigating. The government should investigate, but they're not doing it, because they know for sure once they start doing it, they are going to be like taken accountable themselves. You know, so they're not going to start an investigation about it.
In terms of what's happening in the country, as we all know, Guinea is a country as well that is very dear to me. I've been into the country not once, not twice, and some family members are still there. What's the main struggle in that country? Because looking at that country, there are so many potentials, but you get into the country, it's a country that has got so many mineral riches like diamonds, gold, bauxite, you name it. But yet, the country is one of the poorest in the world. You know, what's the main problem here? Who can you cast all this blame to?
Mr. Jallo, that it's easy. It's the leadership. You know, the leadership. That's it. You know, if a country has all the potential to develop and it's not developing, it's the leadership is not working, it's broken. That's the reason why we're fighting. The leadership is broken. If you check right now in Guinea, as you said, Guinea is one of the richest countries on earth. How come would you explain that the Guineans are the poorest people? In France, for example, the Guineans are at the top list in African asylum seekers. Number one in Africa, they are Guineans. And when you say French, people sometimes refer to the language because Guinea is a French-speaking country. Ivory Coast is there. Ivory Coast has been in war in 2002, but Guinea beat them. You know, Mali is there. 7 or 8 years now, Mali is in constant war. The country is nearly stateless. But Guinea come top. The only reason, and those Guineans, 99.9% of them were born in Guinea. You know, they're not Guinean that born somewhere else and came to seek asylum in France. And furthermore, if you go in Germany, ask asylum seekers, Guinea is at the top. Go to Italy, go to Spain. You know, the leadership is not working. That's what the struggle is about. That's the reason why we're fighting. We're not only fighting to replace the government, but we are fighting to change a system that can produce leaders like President Alpha Condé.
I know you may not be in the position to answer this, or you might not be the right person for me to ask this question, but President Alpha Condé is a person who was in the opposition, if I'm not mistaken, for 40 years. Someone who was preaching democracy, someone who was preaching human rights, someone who was preaching the right of everyone. Why this sudden change?
I'm as confused as you, because President Alpha Condé was the only opposition leader that has never been involved in any government. You know, he never accepted to undertake any position in the previous government. Sorry. He had offers, but he always declined them. When he came to power, there was hope for Guineans. First of all, he never got involved in any embezzlement of public funds or corruption cases, or he's from the diaspora, he's been living in Europe for 40 years. So he didn't only know what is development, but he actually lived it. You know, it was a hope for us. But finally, we were disappointed. Since he was elected in 2010, till now, he's done some changes, but very small changes, you know. The average, it's chaotic. Nothing moves forward. Every single day, in addition to Ebola, every single day is a protest. If the schools are closed, university students are not going to university, the opposition are on the street because there've been election and the result is not coming out. You know, even in speeches, wherever the President Alpha Conde speeches is a disaster. So we are as confused as you. How come Alpha Conde that we knew yesterday as a great man, a great leader, a great opposition leader, can become who he is today?
Well, Guinea is a former French colony. Before I come back to the role of France, because I was looking at it earlier, doing some research. Currently, there are about 4 African countries whose presidents are trying to change the constitution and to seek a 3rd term. And all those countries happens to be French-speaking countries, former colonies of France. Guinea being another one. Cameroon, Paul Biya, who has been in power for nearly 40 years plus, being among them. Ivory Coast, another one. And likewise, Uganda. Uganda, the only country being not a French-speaking country. My question here is, do you think there is a role that the former colony is playing? Because there is always the allegation there that, you know, the imperialists are still kind of controlling Africa, which the French-speaking countries are the ones suffering the most. So what role do you think France is playing here?
French has been playing its role, you know. It's unfortunate, but France, the leadership, it's involved in all this. You know, if you noticed, English-speaking countries, you know, on average, have less political issues than French-speaking countries. The reason behind it, because France always want to prove that they are the leader, they are you are a colony. They get involved in monetary, they get involved in politics, they get involved in social, they get involved in education. I don't know if you've recently seen Bolloré. Bolloré was accused of getting involved in the outcome of the election in many countries in Africa, including Guinea and Cameroon, that he had a deal with the current president in relation to help them out, you know, gain the presidency, and in return, they're going to give him contract. Bolloré is a French. He was accused of that, but ever since we hear of nothing. French is involved in it, and I know for sure that French plays a great role in what's going on in Guinea and all the former French colonies. So
speaking of that, though, what has been their stance on the protests that has been happening in the country in terms of the killings and, you know, the country not functioning properly?
I've not heard any like official declaration of the French government or the president in relation to all that. But I don't even think we need it, you know, to be honest. This struggle, it's our struggle, you know. It's, if I say our struggle, I don't mean only Guineans. It's struggle, it's Sierra Leoneans, it's African struggle, and it's a human struggle, you know, as a big society. I'm just going to highlight a couple of things that, you know, will edify us about what I'm talking about. So a couple of days ago, I was reading a newspaper where I saw, like, human activities has increased 45% of carbon dioxide concentration since the Industrial Revolution around 1970s. It didn't say French activities or British or American activities. They said human activities, right? So that put us in one plate. I know that for a fact some people have contributed in that more than others, you know. And we've all seen recently the killing in New Zealand, where some people saw it live on Facebook. That image traumatized a lot of people around the world. They don't have to be from New Zealand or European or African, you know. The world has become a village, a big village, where you can have breakfast in Conakry, lunch in London, and sleep in New York. I'm just saying that because what affects one can affect the other in short or long time. So it's time for us, not for the French government or the British government, for us as human to take responsibilities, you know, especially over leaders that hide behind sovereignty, kill their own population, violate international laws and treaties. So talking about that, I don't want to focus on what France can do to help Guineans, you know, because France has never helped Guinean, and we don't even need their help. We just want them to withdraw from our internal affairs.
When you say withdraw, obviously it's a former colony, and there will be still a lot of influence looking at it being one of the world superpowers in the world, or one of the most influential looking at Africa in general. The FNDC members, we know some people are still being arrested. Some of your leaders are still kind of locked up since these protests began. Has there been any update on that?
There haven't been an update, unfortunately, but we are fighting for it because these leaders were unlawfully, unconstitutionally arrested just because they are protesting for the right, which is allowed by the Constitution, and they were arrested and incarcerated for many weeks now. So there haven't been any update, but in our program, FNDC program, whether in Britain or around the world, we're trying to put pressure on the authorities in order to free them.
Okay, we'll leave it there at the minute. We'll go for a short break, but we'll be back soon. And don't go anywhere. We'll be back after the break.